Yo, this is T.O.T. Thank you for dropping in today, if you have. Very recently, I watched the Genshin Impact 6.0, aka Luna 1 special program. There were a good number of things that was covered in that special program, and I just wanted to highlight some of the things that were standouts for me personally. So, for starters, the Nodcry region looks really cool, although I'm not for sure how much I will explore it. It kind of looks like it has that early tech going on in it, kind of like Industrial Revolution kind of stuff. I don't know if that was a theme that they were going for, or if I'm just misinterpreting things, but either way, region looks pretty cool so far from the previews from what I've seen. And one thing that I do like with one of the upcoming characters is that the creatures in the environment will actually interact with that said character, and I think that is kind of cool for the sake of world exploration and things along those lines for people who do enjoy that. Now, I haven't been big on exploration since in Inazuma. I have tried to complete more exploration in Natlan in comparison to Fontaine and Sumeru, so I'm very slowly knocking out Natlan, so that's where my exploration progress is kind of at currently. So the first quality of life that I want to talk about is whenever we get a 3-lined artifact, we can now get a preview on what the 4th stat is going to be on that artifact. I think this is going to be pretty nice because this will allow us to save on some of our junk materials that we normally throw into something to +4 it. Now we'll automatically know whether or not we can keep it or just go ahead and get rid of it. The second quality of life that we are getting is whenever there is a new 5-star character limited warp, they're going to open up the talent and the weapon material domains, and those are going to be opened up completely for the first week. So in the past, those have been time gated. You could only do certain ones on certain days with the exception of Sunday. Now they're opening it up to being like that for a whole entire first week of that new event warp. So if I'm understanding this correct, this may take place 2 times per patch, assuming that we get 2 new characters that are 5-star. My problem with this is they should have just completely removed the restrictions altogether. I don't think this is something I'm going to give them full kudos on, because at this point in the game, there is no reason to still have this time restriction lock on it. Honkai Star Rail doesn't have it, and while Genshin has had this for a while, at this point there's no excuse in my opinion. Now, throughout Inazuma, sure, I could see there being a justification for it because we didn't have nearly as many characters, but since post Inazuma, we have literally gotten 3 more regions worth of characters, and then Nodcry is going to be the 4th. I do think that there's enough characters in this game to keep a lot of new players and even some older players occupied, and I think opening this up to have it to where we can grind these materials every single day, I think would be a good thing. Instead of doing this drip quality of life and just halfway doing it, just do it right the first time so that way you don't have to go back to make improvements to it later on. So this one I'm kind of on. It's better than nothing, but I'm not going to give them complete kudos on this because they obviously could have fully opened this up and they chose not to. And for the next quality of life, we are going to have something called To Temper Thyself and Journey Far. So essentially what this is going to allow us to do is it will give us the opportunity to collect 1 constellation for certain characters. This is going to include the standard characters, and this will include most Liyue, Inazuma, and Sumeru characters. Now, there are a couple of downsides with this. The first downside is Yelan and Kazuha are not there. There is speculation that those characters still sell very well, hence why they didn't show up there. And the second downside is that you will only be able to get 1 of these constellations per character. Now, currently, as it stands, it doesn't seem like this is going to be something that will reset. I do personally hope this resets on a year-to-year basis because honestly, most of these characters I don't even have. So if this doesn't reset on a year-to-year basis to where I can get 1 constellation per character per year, I'm not gonna think this is all that great of a system. I also don't think this is gonna be all that great of a system for newer players who came into the game. Let's say they started playing during Fontaine, for example. Well, they're not gonna have a mass majority of these characters, and since you already have to have this character at C0 or above to even qualify to get the constellation for the character, that's kind of a double oof in itself. Now, in the event that this is just a one-time exchange and you can never do it ever again, what I think would have been the solution would be to allow players to get 1 copy of any of these characters, no matter who it was. And if that would have been the case, what I would have done is used one of those exchanges to get Ayato. I've always liked Ayato's playstyle playstyle, I just always skipped out on him, but I could use more hydro coverage on my account, so I would have definitely picked him up if that would have been an option. Only time is going to tell if they'll reset this on a year-to-year basis. I hope they do, because some of these characters, even though they have an okay C1, not all of them do. For example, Ayaka doesn't have all that great of a C1. You would ideally want to get her at least C2, and even then the C2 is only situationally good because the target needs to be big enough for the side parts of her burst to not go flying off into the distance. That's just an example. Yoimiya's constellations overall aren't really that strong. Yaimiko does have a good C1 and a good C2. I'm just spitballing stuff off the top of my head, so I apologize. But yeah, overall, I'm kind of about this. Yes, on the one hand, it is better than nothing, but I don't think this is going to be benefiting players to the extent that it could have. I would have definitely preferred if we could have just picked any character that we wanted, didn't have any restrictions on it, and in that case, even if it would have been a one and done thing, I think that still would have been great, because for newer players coming into the game, they would have had this old roster of characters that they could have pulled on, and they could have just built teams around them to help them progress through the end game quicker. Even if they would have dropped them for newer characters later on, this would have been still a good substitute building stone. Plus, on top of that, they could have still taken these characters into the theater mode where you have to have a lot of characters, and they still would have been an option there. So I think that would have been a much bigger win than how they have it set up currently. Overall, there have been some good things in this patch, and there have been some things that I'm pretty disappointed about. We'll see how the Nod Cry story turns out. I think the concert, as normal, was fantastic. Genshin Impact, in my opinion, once again delivered on the music department, and don't have really too much else to say on that. I'm looking forward to the story in Nod Cry. I don't know if I'll like it more than Natlan, but only time will really tell on that. One last thing that I will mention in this video is one of the devs made a comment about Genshin Impact potentially lasting for 20 years as a goal. Now, I personally don't see that happening because, like many other people have already mentioned, Genshin Impact is only 5 years in, and a decent number of people have already gotten bored with Genshin Impact and left to play some other games. So how are you expecting this game to survive for another 15 years? And the only way I could really see them making that possible is if they either turn Genshin Impact into an expanded universe IP, like what MiHoYo has been doing with the Honkai IP over the years, or they have a radical aggressive shift on their quality of life updates and they become mega aggressive about them and actually stop doing half-baked quality of life updates and just do it right the first time. That's the only way I can see this game even remotely potentially making it to 20 years. And even if that change were to be made, a lot of things are going to change in the gaming industry in 10 years, in 15 years. People's interests are going to change. Real life changes are going to happen. Maybe somebody won't have as much time to play games. Again, with the industry changes, for example, gacha games are like a top genre right now, but they may not be a top genre in 10 or 15 years. It may be some other genre that dominates the market. Who knows? Now, there was also a level design feature shown off toward the end of the special program. I think this will be very big for players who love to create their own levels, their own worlds, their own gameplay elements, and things along those lines. However, I don't think this in isolation is going to allow Genshin to last for another 10 years. I view this in the same vein as the Serenity Teapot. For players who love to create things, this is going to be phenomenal for them. But for players like me, I get no value out of this personally. I'm glad it's here for those players. This isn't just going to be for me. And I do think that Genshin Impact is going to have to do significantly more than just have this separate game mode added on in order for Genshin Impact to survive for 20 years. Now, one of the individuals I speak to on a consistent basis, he speculates that this game mode might be used for MiHoYo to kind of seek talent to recruit into their company and kind of be able to filter things out. Only time will tell on how true that will end up being. That's all my thoughts that I have for this video. If you're taking out the time to watch this or listen to this, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. You be safe out there. Deuces.